Welcome to the Health by Haven podcast. I'm your host, Haven Quinlan. If you're a multi-passionate wellness enthusiast, then you're in the right place. I'm obsessed with learning as much as I can about the wellness world, and I want to share that with you. Each episode will dive into various aspects of health and wellness through inspiring and informative guest interviews with some solo episodes thrown in. Tune in for all things health, and let's have some fun, shall we? Is your home in need of a refresh? I don't know about you, but I love reimagining and redesigning my space. If you're wanting to liven up your space and level up your decor, be sure to check out Arrange Your Paints on Etsy. The shop is full of beautiful paintings, many inspired by nature, and all sure to give your home a custom feel. The paintings also make great housewarming or birthday gifts. I've gifted paintings from the shop and have a Ranger Paints artwork in my loft. As a special thank you for supporting the Health by Haven podcast, you can get 10% off your order with code HXH10. You can find the full collection of work at arrangerpaints.etsy.com or scroll down to the show notes for the link. Caroline Green is an experienced private practice dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor, specializing in a weight-inclusive, trauma-informed nutrition therapy for eating disorders, disordered eating, intuitive eating, chronic dieting, and body image. Caroline has a special interest in the intersection of trauma and eating disorders and somatic-integrated nutrition therapy. She helps clients break free from dieting extremes to learn how to nourish their bodies without shame. She is the owner and sole practitioner at Caroline Green Nutrition, based out of Columbia, South Carolina. So first of all, Caroline, thanks so much for coming on the Health by Haven podcast today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yes. So, okay, to kick things off, for people who may not know you or who may not follow you on Instagram already, tell us a little bit more about yourself and also how you got interested in the world of health, of nutrition, and specifically in eating disorder recovery.
Yeah. So I grew up an athlete and played soccer, could kind of eat whatever I wanted and was a stick. And then come high school, it was almost like overnight, I developed a lot of like stomach issues and kind of health stuff and was fatigued and would bloat up and puff up anytime I ate anything. And I mean, to the point where I had to quit soccer and I was going to doctor after doctor, and they did a bunch of tests and they couldn't find anything. And so like intuitively, I knew it was like had to do with food because I felt fine, but then I would eat and just have pain and bloating and lots of stomach issues. And so that just kind of led me to like researching about food and nutrition and like, should I go gluten-free? Should I try to go vegan? Like, what's going to help? And long story short, I just had a non-celiac gluten sensitivity and some thyroid stuff going on. And after I figured that out, it was like night and day, and I was back to my healthy self. But it was kind of a blessing in difficult times in that I learned about food and how food makes your body feel. I mean, you know, I never thought about it growing up. I just ate like Eggo waffles and cereal and all that and ran around on the soccer field. But it really opened my eyes to just the different types of food and how food makes our bodies feel. And yeah. And so from that, I knew I wanted to become a dietitian come high school. I shadowed one my senior year for a project and really loved it. I love connecting with people. And so I was kind of one of the few that knew exactly what I wanted to do when I was like,
Yeah.
So I knew I wanted to be a private practice dietitian from there.
Okay, wow. So cool that you learned that at such a young age, and then you actually got to go to school for that and live out that in your practice currently. And I think it's also, I mean, what you went through in high school does not sound fun, but kind of like you said, a little bit of a blessing in disguise that you got to learn more about nutrition and how food makes you feel. And it's it's so much more interconnected than I think a lot of people realize, and more than just like this food is XYZ food is quote bad or quote good or anything like that. It's like all these different foods can fuel your body differently, can affect your energy levels, and so many more things. So, talk to us a little bit, I guess, about your schooling once you started in college, going through studying. I know it's an intensive major. So, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, totally. So I went to the University of Georgia. Sorry, Gamecock fans, go Dogs. And I majored in dietetics, nutrition. And from there, you graduate with a bachelor's of science degree and then go on to do an internship, a dietetic internship. And it's kind of a rigorous process to get matched. It's kind of like if anyone's ever been a sorority, like they rank you and you rank them and like hope for like a good match. And so I worked at WIC for a year after I graduated from Georgia as I was getting work experience because you kind of have to have that to get into an internship, and learned a lot there as just a nutritionist. And then from there, I got matched to Georgia Southern University. And that was a year and a half long internship. And I did grad school with it. So I would go to class some days and then do rotations. An internship, you basically kind of shadow different dietitians in the field. You learn all the different aspects like school nutrition or working in a hospital or working in the community because there's so many ways you can use, your degree in being a dietitian. So I did that at Georgia Southern and then passed my boards and became a dietitian and kind of have always been in the private practice realm. I started off, doing a classic kind of clinical job in hospital settings, different floors, stroke floors, trauma floors, ICU, while also working for different private practices on the side. So, I think I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, and I've worked at different private practices and different kind of clinical jobs, and then ultimately started my own practice, probably during COVID, I think. Yeah, it's been maybe 4 years now.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like maybe you got to dip your toes a little bit into the different types of jobs you can have as a dietitian. But how did you kind of figure out, okay, I like doing this, I don't like doing this? I know you have a very specialized practice now. So maybe you walk us through. I'm thinking about if people are listening and they're interested in that world and maybe wanting to either start their career there or switch their career there. Like, what does that look like? And what did it look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I totally did not know like what kind of nutrition like specialty I wanted to go into. Just like someone going into medical school, not everyone knows like, oh, I want to be a cardiologist or an obstetrician, I just kind of was like, I know how to counsel people, but we'll see where it takes me. My first counseling job was at a practice in Florida when I lived there. So I was working full time in a hospital and then, part time in a private practice. And it was great because I saw everyone there. The dietitian owner was kind of doing more like owner stuff and opened a CrossFit gym. So I just saw anybody that came. So I was kind of forced to like see anything. So someone coming in with Crohn's disease, and I'd have to kind of learn everything about Crohn's disease and really tailor it to them. And then someone else would come in with diabetes. And so that just kind of having like general nutrition counseling really helped me kind of learn everything and figure out like, what do I like? What do I not like? What do I really just kind of like relate to helping people with? And there's aspects of being a dietitian that I just didn't like. I didn't like just here's a meal plan, eat this, don't eat that. Like that's not gonna ever help someone, to be honest, because, you know, and this is one of the reasons why diets will never work for people is because it doesn't take into account the psychology behind it, right?
Hmm.
There's so many different factors that go into our relationship to food. And so my first job as a dietitian, I was kind of like instructed to like, here, give this person this meal plan and calculate this. And no one ever followed it. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe this person is super stressed and has no time, so they can't make all their food from scratch. And then maybe this person just doesn't like those foods that we're telling them to eat. There's just so much that goes into food choices every day. Um, and so from there, I kind of already was like, yeah, I don't want to just like tell people what to eat. And then when I moved to Columbia, South Carolina, I started at another private practice and kind of same thing, saw a little bit of everything. Thought I wanted to specialize in GI because of my own
Mm-hmm.
background with like
Mm-hmm.
IBS and food sensitivities. And had a few years of kind of doing that and enjoyed it. A lot of IBS, a lot of Crohn's, a lot of ulcerative colitis, just like learning about gut health. Um, and from there, I was like, I don't know, because I had a ton of people that would come in and wanted to lose weight or just struggled with going on diet after diet. And I was like, this
Mm-hmm.
is just a pattern I kept seeing was just diet culture, diet culture, diet culture, and having to basically teach people not to be afraid of a banana or it's okay to eat like bread. And so
Mm-hmm.
I found that I was just constantly busting myths basically and teaching people to kind of chill out when it came to food
Yeah.
nutrition, not to go so extreme and count every calorie and like so I started naturally from there, taking the focus off weight and focusing on healthy habits and building sustainable healthy habits and using what we call in nutrition counseling like motivational interviewing. So, how important is it to you to make this change? What do you think is going into, not being able to, you know, eat vegetables forever, only on a diet, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot of just transitioning into more real counseling and therapeutic modalities to help people like understand their behaviors and understand why they just go on diet after diet. And so long story short, from there, I became certified as an intuitive eating counselor. And with that, you get a lot of people with disordered eating, right? Like
Yeah.
wanting to heal their relationship with food and stop thinking about food 24/7, wanting to get off the diet bandwagon. And so with that, I then was at another group practice that specialized in eating disorders. And I was definitely the type in my career that was like, I'm never going to do that. That's so hard. It's so specialized. Like, I don't know that it's not anything you learn in school or, my internship. Like, it's
Wow.
specialized. So it's like, I don't know. I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But over the years, I learned. I got more eating disorder clients and had, people with their certified eating disorder specialty fully trained me and got more comfortable with it and found that I really enjoyed it because I don't know. The psychology has always been really interesting to me. Um, and when you can really like connect with someone and like hold space for so much pain and hurt and just their experience and their story and help them slowly start to peel the layers back and learn how to not have so much shame around food or their body, like it's magic. It is such like a privilege to be able to stand alongside someone and do that with them. And so I just kind of fell in love with it. And that's what I kind of just dove in head first. And that here I am. That's my specialty now.
Wow. Okay. So much goodness in there. So many different ways I want to go from that. But I am so surprised that even studying nutrition, undergrad, graduate, in an internship for over a year, that you really didn't focus on, disordered eating or intuitive eating or anything like that. So, how did you go from that to starting to feel comfortable working with this clientele? Were there additional like trainings you had to do? Was it learning as you went? Like, how was that?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, to be honest, I haven't even thought about this in a while, but like it's so true. I think things are starting to change, but gosh, like we learn a lot of like medical nutrition therapy in school because there are just so many dietitians that are needed in hospital settings, right? With like tube feeding and just different
Mm-hmm.
medical conditions. Um, but it's just shocking to me how kind of outdated a lot of the programs are, and that I didn't learn about like, yeah, eating disorders, disordered eating, just dieting, and just like how potentially having such a focus on nutrition can backfire in some people. And so, yeah, I truly had to kind of learn myself and do extra training. So it first started with Rachel Hartley is an amazing dietitian. She's um, was based in Columbia and moved to Boston, but she was kind of doing this work before me and opened my eyes. I think she did a local training many, many years ago about just like intuitive eating and like weight inclusive care. And that was like the light bulb that went off. So from there, I pursued the training to become certified in intuitive eating, which was wonderful. It involved like supervision with one of the founders and, um, reading books and tons of reading research and training. Then after that, I learned under two other fabulous dietitians all about eating disorders and how to treat that. So they trained me at their group practice. Obviously, being a dietitian, you have to do tons of continuing ed every single year. I'm always doing webinars, always reading books, always, talking with supervisors that have been doing this for 20 years and learning from them. Because it is with eating disorders, it is so specialized and just intense and sensitive that you have to kind of be under supervision, just like other therapists. They have supervision with people ahead of them that have been doing this a long time. There's also a training I've been undergoing to become certified as an eating disorder specialist. And same kind of thing, lots of reading, lots of webinars, reading research, and just getting tons of hours with a dietitian to sign off that like you're working with eating disorder clients. And to be honest, a lot of it is just learning on the job,
Yeah.
experience, like, oh, okay, that didn't go well. Okay, I'm going to do this next time. Or, ooh, when I kind of talked about body image in that way, like that really hit home for that person. And so
Hmm.
it's a little bit of tons of extra training and just kind of trying things and not being afraid to do the hard stuff and learn from the job.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's so individualized based
Oh,
off
yeah.
of the client that you're working with. And the way you say something to somebody may connect with them more than another way. You have to say it different to somebody else. So
Yeah.
I can only imagine it's definitely the mixture of learning the science, of course, in the trainings, but then learning on the job, like the delivery is what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. The counseling and therapy piece is something that dietitians aren't taught. And so that's a lot of the extra learning is like, we're not a therapist because we're not diving into someone's trauma, but we use therapeutic modalities to specifically talk about food and body. So it's like, okay, we have to learn like therapeutic modalities and how to apply that and that's where all the extra training comes from because we aren't taught that just in basic like dietetic schooling.
Yeah. And so, from what you said about schooling, it sounds like they were mostly focused on dietitians and nutritionists in a hospital setting where maybe you're giving them an IV that's like saving their life versus the average day-to-day person that maybe it sounds like you're working with more now who just comes in and they said, I really need help with this eating disorder or with getting out of yo-yo dieting or whatever it may be. And so I imagine those are two very different groups of
That's,
clientele as well. So what was it like kind of going from working with one type to the other?
oh my gosh, such a great question. It was crazy because yeah, like I would go part-time to the hospital and like be in total like nerd science mode where you're like crunching numbers and like calculating tube feeds and like it's a lot of math and science versus then like, okay, closing that. Now I have to switch my brain completely to like therapeutic modalities and like just like human communication, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the difference is night and day. I just didn't have the passion for clinical work and knew my heart was always in private practice. So I always envisioned doing that full time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I want to focus a little bit more on, I guess, your business and the clientele you normally have now. I know we've talked already about it being mostly, people coming in for disordered eating, how to learn to eat intuitively, chronic dieting, poor body image, things like that. So, first of all, when clients are coming to you, obviously we cannot share people's information, but like generally, are
Yeah.
most people coming into you with similar struggles. And if there are people listening to this podcast episode who are experiencing those struggles as well, what are some of the things or the tools, I guess, that you help these individuals learn that you've seen success with that's helped them understanding that it takes time as well?
Absolutely. So you're right. Like, I'd say there's definitely like themes of different clients I see, but everyone's so different. I could have one person coming in struggling with overeating and emotional eating and someone with binge eating disorder maybe. And so what we do for them is totally different from someone who maybe has ADHD and really struggles with like building sustainable healthy habits. I have a ton of people that struggle with just like nutrition in general, and maybe they go to work and they don't eat enough during the day, and then they come home and they're starving, so they overeat. I can't tell you how many times I see that. And so there's a lot of just in general, a lot of diet rhetoric of I need to be eating less and eating better. And then it results in eating past fullness, feeling really guilty, binge eating, right? Just that yo-yo dieting of restriction and deprivation, and then going in the other direction. So that's like a big theme of just what I see everyone struggle with, I feel like. And some people struggle with, okay, they take that and they really are restricting and under eating and struggling with that versus another person maybe under eating and restricting and it's causing binging. But the kind of crucifix of many of the issues that I work with is diet culture, poor body image, lots of shame around food choices, not knowing like what is the right way to eat, and then it just kind of makes roller coaster eating habits. And so, yeah, first thing I focus on, I kind of have what I call a hierarchy of nutrition needs. In general, I'm working with the intuitive eating principles, and what that is kind of an umbrella for how to have a healthy relationship with food and nutrition. So, nutrition and wellness without dieting, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, there's actually books about it, and there's 10 kind of overarching principles. And I like to describe them as like the stepping stones of how to just have a healthier relationship to food in your body and get out of that diet cycle. And so that could be helping clients tune back into their body. So hunger and fullness cues and feeding their body regularly, not going 7 hours without eating.
Yeah.
They're starving. And of course, they're going to want anything they can get their hands on. Helping people with body image and kind of challenging the rhetoric been sold about weight equals health and BMI, and just helping people unlearn that there's a lot of research that shows that, that's not true. And that BMI is kind of a BS indicator of health. And I feel like a lot of people are understanding that now. And just kind of helping people with more regularity of eating. So enough to eat, balance, variety, and not going to the extremes with food. And so, yeah, it kind of depends on what they're coming in to see. But overall, I'm helping people eat more adequately, making sure they're not under eating.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that alone can help people like really not overeat as much, not binge eat as much, and then we're working on balance. So carbs, protein, fat, fiber at your meals, I always use the term CP triple F, carbs, protein, fat, fiber, and fun or flavor, right? Because that's always taken out with diets.
Yeah.
And so just kind of teaching people like, yeah, what is normal eating? How do we connect back in with hunger and fullness? How do we make peace with different foods and not view them as good or bad, and kind of make food more neutral and think about nutrition in a more sense of being flexible and not so kind of rigid and all or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. We're like feeding from the same drum here because that is just how you have a sustainable, healthy life versus the ups and the downs.
Absolutely.
Okay. With the holidays coming up, I know that that's like certainly a sensitive time for people around eating and body image.
Yep.
and they might be traveling around the holidays to see family, so they're out of their normal routine, or maybe they're not in their kitchen as often. How do you help like coach clients through that so that they can have a healthy mindset throughout the holidays where they're able to enjoy themselves?
Yeah, totally. So I think the first is going back to the first foundation, right? Eating enough and eating regularly and consistently, right? So typically recommend eating every 3 to 5 hours for blood sugar balance because when our blood sugar is balanced, it helps our metabolism, it helps our mood, it helps our energy, and it prevents that roller coaster of under eating and then overeating. So especially with travel, like, packing snacks, like controlling what you can, right? Um, and really my kind of philosophy with nutrition is focusing on addition rather than subtraction, right? Like diets are all about like avoid this food, take this out, restrict this,
Mm-hmm.
when that just creates chaos. And to be honest, research shows that when we reduce foods, cut foods out, it makes us want it more,
Yeah.
right? It can lead to overeating later on. And so it's about what can we add to our routine? Okay, so we're traveling. Well, what's something that is in our control, right? Can we pack a big water bottle so we're hydrated while we're flying? Can we pack some snacks in our bags so that, we don't go 7 hours without fuel in our bodies? Um, so just a little bit of planning ahead without having to control or be too crazy, right? Like, please, you don't have to pack like your blender to go travel. Like that not very healthy. But what can you do? And knowing it's you're not your body's not going to change all of a sudden with a few days of not quote unquote perfect eating because there is no such thing, right? The media has kind of vastly overblown, weight gain during the holidays when research shows most people gain 1 or 2 pounds. Like it's not much.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like let's kind of focus on balance. What can we control? Can we add in a walk? Can we add in some extra hydration? Can we focus on also just like wellness as a whole, right? Can we get enough sleep? Can we focus on self-care? Because when we look at health and wellness, it's holistic.
Mm-hmm.
I often bring up, you can always Google it, just the wellness wheel, and it shows all the
Yes.
sectors of wellness, right? And so, maybe the holidays isn't a time where you're able to exercise a ton because you're busy or you have holiday parties and work is slammed. Like, that's okay. Maybe it's when you're fostering social relationships because that's one of the number one links to health is social connection and community. So it's looking at wellness as a whole and a zoomed out approach and not just how much food we're eating, right? Another thing is thinking about how psychology plays a role, right? So if we're just like stressed, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so out of control this holiday season, there's going to be so much food, that can almost cause that just by thinking that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So giving ourselves permission to enjoy fun foods, it helps us feel more satisfied and be able to stop after 1 or 2 cookies versus eating all of them because of what we call Last Supper mentality. Like, oh my gosh, I only am allowed desserts during the holidays. I never allow myself to eat these, causes people to then go a little bit crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of also talking about the psychology around that. Like, yeah, making sure you're well fed regularly so you're not going to a holiday party just starving and really checking those diet thoughts, right? Because that plays a huge role in our food choices. And most people don't realize that because it's just so normalized.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you brought the wellness wheel up. I haven't actually thought about it in a while, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And maybe I'll be able to find a link to put in the show notes, but would definitely encourage everyone to take a look at that because I remember years back when I learned about it, it really did open my eyes to how much wellness is intertwined and not just what a lot of people probably think of wellness as like nutrition and workouts. Cause like I know I grew up thinking that
Yeah.
because that's really that was all that was talked about at school, even though it's very minimal. But it is, like you said, like the social connection, spiritual connection, your work life satisfaction, like all of those things.
Yeah,
Sleep is
sleep.
so
Oh yeah.
important, stress is so important. So, certainly thinking about all of those things in the holidays. And I love your approach of like, if one of them is maybe lacking out of what your normal like day-to-day routine is, maybe the other one is higher. And so it will all like balance out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Love the wellness wheel.
Yes, it's great. Okay, so anyone listening who, I don't know, maybe we'll have like high schoolers or college students listening who might be thinking about studying nutrition, dietetics in school. What would some advice be if you could go back, to your younger self in those years? I'm sure challenging coursework and internship and looking for your first jobs in this world. Like, what would some advice be?
Yes. So first is it is heavily science and math based. So make sure that's what you like to do, or maybe that's a strong suit of yours. Like I was always math and science, so I kind of naturally fell into that. But if you're very like history or English focused and you're not so strong in math and science, it might not be the best for you. So just know that that's kind of a lot of the classes. Like you have to do organic chemistry, which is
Mm,
very difficult. And it's a lot of math. So knowing that, also knowing, to be honest, like it's not a very high paying field, you know? That's one of the reasons I went into private practice is to try to, control how much I actually can make from it. It's very well known in the dietitian community that for all the amount of education and schooling we do, it's not, we don't get paid a lot. So it's just worth mentioning because it is a reality of
mm,
the field. There are dietitians leaving the field because of that reason. A lot of dietitians at my last hospital job worked side hustles just to help.
yeah.
And so just being real with that, like I'm very grateful. I'm very passionate about this job. But if you need to be the breadwinner, it's hard. It really is. And then third, just yeah, it's also amazing. Like if you love food and nutrition and wellness and you know kind of maybe what you want to do in it, like there's so many areas you can go into. And I think that's the beautiful side of being a dietitian is hey, if I get bored with doing this in 5 years, I can do something totally different and learn a totally new job. And hey, that's awesome. Like there's so many opportunities within the field as well.
Yeah, that is very cool. It seems like way more than what you may think at face value, all the different routes, even that you've just spoken about. So,
Right.
okay. So it sounds to me like the clients that you're working with in private practice, I mean, they're going through a lot. It's a very heavy stuff. So, as you are speaking with them every single day, I'm just thinking about myself personally. I would find it hard to like separate from that. And I think I would like hold a lot of people's emotions. So, how are you, like taking care of yourself as
Yeah.
well?
Yes, I know. So honestly, I think part of what makes me kind of good at my job is I am an empath. Like I have that is like any of those personality tests you do, like that's always number one. It's like you should be a counselor. I'm like, well, cool. I guess that confirms I'm doing what I should be doing.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like I literally can feel other people's emotions. And so you're right, it's heavy. I require all my eating disorder clients to work with a therapist as well,
Hmm.
because they need a lot of support there. They need to be discussing kind of the heavy, heavy therapy stuff with them so we can talk about the food and body image stuff. But
Hmm.
yeah, I do. I have to set a lot of boundaries. Right now, I'm a mom of a toddler, so I'm working part-time now. Like I have to have time to do self-care and decompress because it's a very, very hard job with a really high rates of burnout for that reason.
Hmm.
So you just have to set boundaries. And to be honest, a lot of the skills I help clients with, I use in my own day-to-day life, right? So a lot of what we call regulation. So regulating our nervous system, whether that's deep breathing or yoga or sensory stuff, lighting a candle, dimming the lights, like holding something cozy. There's different kind of coping skills that I teach people how to calm their nervous system so that they can eat a little bit easier. I do the same kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I practice yoga a ton. I go to bed early. I read. I have quiet time. I set limits on social media. So I really do try to practice what I preach, I guess. So I
Yeah.
take care of myself to help them take care of themselves.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, you just gave so many little nuggets right there that people could do to help themselves
Yep.
out as well.
Yep.
Okay, I want to get into a couple of final questions, but before I do, I want to make sure that we're hitting like everything that you're like, if you had a platform, an open mic, I mean, this is it. Like, what else do you want to
Yeah.
make sure everyone knows about the world of
Yeah.
nutrition?
Yeah. So I think, something that is important is I love people to understand how prevalent disordered eating and eating disorders are, right? Most people picture someone with an eating disorder as kind of the classic quote unquote anorexia in the media. They look like they're dying, and, that's someone with an eating disorder. Less than 6% of people with eating disorders are medically underweight. You know, People are walking around in our society with eating disorders all around us, and we don't recognize it. And so every time people talk about diets or comment on people's bodies, like it's triggering a lot of individuals with their own issues around food and body. And so I think it's really important to note, like, that's why I'm so passionate about, you know, like an anti-diet approach, is because dieting's the leading factor of developing into an eating disorder. And I think it's 1 in 4 people who diet will go on to develop an eating disorder around that stat. And so, yeah, I think people are starting to understand, but I think there is still just a misconception for people that don't understand eating disorders because, yeah, it's like only if you're really doing this, you understand. And binge eating disorder is actually the most common eating disorder. So I think it's just so important to understand that dieting has become so normalized in our society, and then pair that with social media that I think eating disorders are at the highest rate they've ever been. And so if you are struggling with food, you're not alone. It's very common now, and there's so much hope for recovery and just getting support. So if you are struggling with, perfectionism with food or feeling really, really guilty, just taking 1 day off from exercise, like that's disordered and you deserve, freedom from that. And so reaching out to a dietitian, reaching out to a therapist is kind of the first step.
I love it. And I know that your words are just going to help so many people. So thank you for sharing all of this. To kind of shift gears into a couple of our fun final questions. My first one, and maybe I know you've already touched on this a little bit, maybe it's a different answer, but what is your favorite workout?
Oh, so like I said, I grew up an athlete, so I am blessed that I've always had like a positive relationship with exercise. I just love to be active. Um, but I will say, like, my favorite workout is variety. Like, I definitely
Yeah.
go through phases. I've tried it all in college. I went through like phases of running and doing half marathons, and I loved that. And then I got bored of that, and then I got into Pilates and the Megaformer, and then I had, a huge like yoga phase in Florida. So, like, to be honest, I love it all. Like bar, Pilates, running, hiking, anything outdoors. I love it all. I love it all. The
I
only
lo-
thing I don't really enjoy is like boot camp style stuff or like really intense
mm,
classes. Other than that, like I love it all.
I love it. I love the variety, and our bodies love the variety
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
Okay, what's your favorite food, or you can pick a few because I know that's really hard to narrow down.
Oh Lord. Hey Ben, why do you gotta get me with that?
These are the hard hitters, Carolyn.
Okay, so I love pizza.
Mm,
I will never say no to a really good pizza. That's one of my favorites. Um, Sushi,
mm.
love sushi. Um, Yeah, I'm definitely like grew up just like loving carbs as a soccer player, like pasta, bagels, like that was literally the bulk of my diet. So I still like I love cereal, like I love any bread and butter. Um, and then like more nourishing foods, I love sweet potatoes, I love avocados,
Mm,
I love oatmeal and yogurt and salmon, all that stuff. Yeah, there's not many foods I really don't like.
yeah, that's good. More variety keeps
A
things
good thing, yeah,
interesting.
a good thing.
Okay, any new wellnessy products, classes, books, anything that you have been into lately that we should check out?
Mm. I mean, obviously, if this sounds interesting to anyone, please check out the Intuitive Eating book. It's like the OG book, written in 1991. Like this is not like a new concept. And that can usually be a light bulb for a lot of people if you struggle with dieting or body image. That's always a classic. As far as podcasts go, like we talked about, the work I do is very heavy. So I just listen to comedy. Like Heather
Yeah.
McMahon, she's my gal. Um, so as far as like nutrition related podcasts, Christy Harrison's always a good resource. Um, and I mean, there's quite a few. There's resources on my website. So
Okay,
any
great.
good ideas, there's books and podcasts and all that on CarolineGreenNutrition.com because I'm blinking right now.
Yeah. Okay, I've got some rapid fire for you. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, morning or evening workout?
Morning.
Running or walking?
Honestly, walking now post baby,
Yeah.
like my body's still not the same 3 years later, but God, I love running. I do love running. But now I'm like, I walk more now.
Yeah. Lifting or body weight?
Body weight.
Indoor or outdoor workouts?
Outdoor. Oh yeah.
Juice or smoothie?
Smoothie, it's got the fiber.
Mm-hmm. Coffee or matcha?
Coffee.
Salad or bowl?
A little bit of both. Like I like greens in my bowl. So
Mm-hmm.
bowl with greens.
Okay, me too. Me too. Good answer. Pizza or pasta?
Pizza.
Tacos or quesadilla?
Tacos.
An early riser or night owl?
Early riser.
Oh,
I don't wake up that early, but like I'm just not a night owl. Like I'm a grandma. I'll be asleep by 9:30 or 10.
oh,
Like,
you and me both.
yeah, like I have a 3-year-old, he wakes up at 6. So
Oh yeah, you
I'm
have to
like
be an
forced
early
to be
riser.
an early riser. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, well, where can everyone follow along, learn more about you and your practice, work with you if they're interested? Tell us all the
Yeah,
things.
totally. Website, CarolineGreenNutrition.com. Green is just like the color. Same with Instagram, Caroline Green Nutrition. I'm not accepting new clients right now. I do have a wait list. So if anyone's interested in working together, you can always go on my website and you can book a free discovery call. So we can chat for 15 minutes, see if it'd be a good fit, and then I can circle back when a spot opens up. Um, and yeah, I love supporting clients. It's a fun kind of journey to walk alongside someone, and it's not easy, but it's so rewarding and it's so cool to witness, and it really can change people's lives, working on their relationship to food. And not only that, it kind of spreads to other areas of their lives, and it's really cool to witness.
Definitely. Well, Caroline, thank you so much for coming on today. I know you had so many helpful nuggets for everyone, whether they're interested in working in the field or interested in some helpful tips in their own relationship with food. So, thank you so much for your time. I just really appreciate you coming on.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to talk about this stuff.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Health by Haven podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review. It makes such a huge difference in reaching new people and spreading the joy of healthy living. I would also be so appreciative if you subscribe to the show in the listening app of your choice so you never miss an episode. Your support truly means the world to me. Have a happy, healthy day, and I'll talk to you again soon.